to which Ulam had contributed to the theories underlying this mechanism. The George shot of Operation Greenhouse of the 9th of May 1951 tested the basic concept for the first time on a very small scale. As the first successful, uncontrolled, release of nuclear fusion energy, which made up a small fraction of the 225 kT, 940 Tj, total yield, 26, it raised expectations to a near certainty that the concept would work. On the 1st of November 1952, the Tele-Ulam configuration was tested at full scale in the Ivy Mike shot at Anisland in the Enutak Atoll, with a yield of 10.4 Mount, 44 pj, over 450 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Nagasaki during World War II. The device, dubbed the Sausage, used an extra-large fission bomber's A-trigger and liquid deuterium kept in its liquid state by 20 short tons, 18 t, of cryogenic equipment as its fusion fuel, and weighed around 80 short tons, 73 t, altogether. The liquid deuterium fuel of Ivy Mike was impractical for a deployable weapon, and the next advance was to use a solid lithium deuteride fusion fuel instead. In 1954 this was tested in the Castle Bravo shot. The device was code-named Shrimp, which had a yield of 15 Mount, 63 pj, 2.5 times expected, and is the largest U.S. bomb ever tested. Efforts in the United States soon shifted towards developing miniaturized Tele-Ulam weapons that could fit into intercontinental ballistic missiles and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. By 1960, with the W-47 warhead, 27, deployed on Polaris ballistic missile submarines, Megaton-class warheads were as small as 18 inches, 0.46 m, in diameter and 720 pounds, 330 kilograms, in weight. Further innovation in miniaturizing warheads was accomplished by the mid-1970s, when versions of the Tele-Ulam design were created that could fit 10 or more warheads on the end of a small MIRV missile. See the section on the W-88 below. 10. Soviet Union. The first Soviet fusion design, developed by Andrei Sakharov and Vitaly Ginzburg in 1949, before the Soviets had a working fission bomb, was dubbed the Sloika, after a Russian layer cake, and was not of the Tele-Ulam configuration. It used alternating layers of fissile material and lithium deuteride fusion fuel spiked with tritium. This was later dubbed Sakharov's first idea. Though nuclear fusion might have been technically achievable, it did not have the scaling property of a staged weapon. Thus, such a design could not produce thermonuclear weapons whose explosive yields could be made arbitrarily large, unlike US designs at that time. The fusion layer wrapped around the fission core could only moderately multiply the fission energy. Modern Tele-Ulam designs can multiply it 30-fold. Additionally, the whole fusion stage had to be imploded by conventional explosives, along with the fission core, substantially increasing the amount of chemical explosives needed. The first Sloika design test, RDS-6S, was detonated in 1953 with a yield equivalent to 400 kT, 1700 Tj, 15% to 20% from fusion. Attempts to use a Sloika design to achieve megaton range results proved unfeasible. After the United States tested the Ivy Mike thermonuclear device in November 1952, proving that a multi-megaton bomb could be created, the Soviets searched for an alternative design. The second idea, as Sakharov referred to it in his memoirs, was a previous proposal by Ginzburg in November 1948 to use lithium deuteride in the bomb, which would, in the course of being bombarded by neutrons, produce tritium and free deuterium. 28. 299 In late 1953 physicist Victor Davydenko achieved the first breakthrough, that of keeping the primary and secondary parts of the bombs in separate pieces, staging. The next breakthrough was discovered and developed by Sakharov and Yakov Zeldovic, that of using the X-rays from the fission bomb to compress the secondary before fusion, radiation implosion, in early 1954. Sakharov's third idea, a stellar Ulam design, was known in the USSR, was tested in the shot RDS-37 in November 1955 with a yield of 1.6 mount, 6.7 pj. The Soviets demonstrated the power of the staging concept in October 1961, when they detonated the massive and unwieldy Tsar bomber, a 50 mount, 210 pj, hydrogen bomb that derived almost 97% of its energy from fusion. It was the largest nuclear weapon developed and tested by any country. United Kingdom. Operation Grapple on Christmas Island was the first British hydrogen bomb test. In 1954 work began at Aldermaston to develop the British fusion bomb, with Sir William Penny in charge of the project. British knowledge on how to make a thermonuclear fusion bomb was rudimentary, and at the time the United States was not exchanging any nuclear knowledge because of the Atomic Energy Act of 1946. However, the British were allowed to observe the U.S. Castle tests and used sampling aircraft in the mushroom clouds, providing them with clear, direct evidence of the compression produced in the secondary stages by radiation implosion. 29. Because of these difficulties, in 1955 British Prime Minister Anthony Eden agreed to a secret plan, whereby if the Aldermaston scientists failed or were greatly delayed in developing the fusion bomb, it would be replaced by an extremely large fission bomb. 29. In 1957 the Operation Grapple tests were carried out. The first test, Green Granite, was a prototype fusion bomb, but failed to produce equivalent yields compared to the US and Soviets, achieving only approximately 300 kt, 1,300 tj. The second test, Orange Herald, was the modified fission bomb and produced 720 kt, 3,000 tj, making it the largest fission explosion ever. At the time almost everyone, including the pilots of the plane that dropped it, thought that this was a fusion bomb. This bomb was put into service in 1958. A second prototype fusion bomb, Purple Granite, was used in the third test, but only produced approximately 150 kt, 630 tj. 29. A second set of tests was scheduled, with testing recommencing in September 1957. The first test was based on a new, simpler design. A two-stage thermonuclear bomb that had a much more powerful trigger. This test Grapple X Round C was exploded on the 8th of November and yielded approximately 1.8 mount, 7.5 pj. On 28 April 1958 a bomb was dropped that yielded 3 mount, 13 pj, Britain's most powerful test. Two final airbursts on the 2nd and the 11th of September 1958, dropped smaller bombs that yielded around 1 mount, 4.2 pj, each. 29. American observers had been invited to these kinds of tests. After Britain's successful detonation of a Megaton range device, and thus demonstrating a practical understanding of the Tele-Ulam design secret, the United States agreed to exchange some of its nuclear designs with the United Kingdom, leading to the 1958 US-UK Mutual Defence Agreement. Instead of continuing with its own design, the British were given access to the design of the smaller American Mk-28 warhead and were able to manufacture copies. 29. The United Kingdom had worked closely with the Americans on the Manhattan Project. British access to nuclear weapons information was cut off by the United States at one point due to concerns about Soviet espionage. Full cooperation was not re-established until an agreement governing the handling of secret information and other issues was signed. 29. China. Mao Zedong decided to begin a Chinese nuclear weapons program during the First Taiwan Strait Crisis of 1954-1955. The People's Republic of China detonated its first hydrogen, thermonuclear, bomb on 17 June 1967, 32 months after detonating its first fission weapon, with a yield of 3.31 mount. It took place in the Lop Nor test site, in northwest China. 30. China had received extensive technical help from the Soviet Union to jumpstart their nuclear program, but by 1960, the rift between the Soviet Union and China had become so great that the Soviet Union ceased all assistance to China. 31. A story in the New York Times by William Broad, 32, reported that in 1995, a supposed Chinese double agent delivered information indicating that China knew secret details of the US W-88 warhead, supposedly through espionage. 33. This line of investigation eventually resulted in the abortive trial of Wen Ho Li. France. The French nuclear testing site was moved to the unpopulated French atolls in the Pacific Ocean. The first test conducted at these new sites was the Canopus test in the Fangatofa Atoll in French Polynesia on 24 August 1968, the country's first multi-stage thermonuclear weapon test. The bomb was detonated from a balloon at a height of 520 meters, 1,710 feet. The result of this test was significant atmospheric contamination. 34. Very little is known about France's development of the Thermonuclear design, beyond the fact that France detonated a 2.6 mount, 11 pj, device in the Canopus test. France reportedly had great difficulty with its initial development of the Thermonuclear design, but it later overcame these, and is believed to have nuclear weapons equal in sophistication to the other major nuclear powers. 29. France and China did not sign or ratify the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty of 1963, which banned nuclear test explosions in the atmosphere, underwater, or in outer space. Between 1966 and 1996, France carried out more than 190 nuclear tests. 34. France's final nuclear test took place on the 27th of January, 1996, and then the country dismantled its Polynesian test sites. France signed the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty that same year and then ratified the treaty within 2 years. France confirmed that its nuclear arsenal contains about 300 warheads, carried by submarine-launched ballistic missiles, SLBMs, and fighter bombers in 2015. France has 4 Triomphant-class ballistic missile submarines. 1 ballistic missile submarine is deployed in the deep ocean, but a total of 3 must be in operational use at all times. The 3 older submarines are armed with 16 M45 missiles. The newest submarine, Le Terrible, was commissioned in 2010, and it has M51 missiles capable of carrying TN-75 thermonuclear warheads. The air fleet is 4 squadrons at 4 different bases. In total, there are 23 Mirage 2000N aircraft and 20 Rafales capable of carrying nuclear warheads. 35. The M51.1 missiles are intended to be replaced with the new M51.2 warhead beginning in 2016, which has a 3,000 kilometers, 1,900 mi, greater range than the M51.1. 35. One of France's Triomphant-class nuclear-armed submarines, L'Etiméraire, S617. France also has about 60 air-launched missiles tipped with TN-80/TN-81 warheads with a yield of about 300 kt, 1,300 tj, each. France's nuclear program has been carefully designed to ensure that these weapons remain usable decades into the future. 29. Currently, France is no longer deliberately producing critical mass materials such as plutonium and enriched uranium, but it still relies on nuclear energy for electricity, with 239Pu as a byproduct. 36. India. Shark T1 on the 11th of May, 1998, India announced that it had detonated a thermonuclear bomb in its Operation Shark T tests. Shark Ti specifically, in Hindi the word Shark T means power,